There's a big meeting at the Justice Department as House Democrats plan to vote tomorrow on whether to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt over the Mueller report. Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler invited to the DOJ to see if a compromise can be reached. Meanwhile, the White House telling former counsel Don McGahn not to comply with a congressional subpoena, citing executive privilege. Joining me now is House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Sir, I know that the Republicans are saying we got to move on, we got pressing business to get to, but it doesn't seem to me that the Democrats, especially Chairman Nadler, are going to let this go.
No, it doesn't seem, but if you look at what Nadler's actions have been, you question even his ability to be a chairman. First of all, at the beginning of every Congress, every committee adopts the rules for their committee. For the history of Congress, inside Judiciary Committee, they've never allowed a staffer to interview a cabinet member. After Attorney General Barr agrees to come to the committee, just as he did in the Senate, Chairman Nadler tries to change the rules of the committee. The other thing that Chairman Nadler has done, and he should know better than this, to send a subpoena down to the White House. Those aren't his papers, those are the White House papers, and he should know that in the process. But it's really beginning question on both sides of the aisle. If you watch Chairman Nadler, he's also failing in the most basic of motions of being a chairman. And if you really want to start thinking about what he's asking Attorney General Barr to do, is to break the law. So if the Attorney General will not break the law, he's going to hold him in contempt. And Chairman Nadler has not even gone down, and he has the right to do it, to read the redacted portions inside the Mueller report.
Do you get the sense, or do you hear anything from the Democratic side, especially maybe from the Speaker's office, that she wishes that they would tap the brakes on this and try to pass some legislation?
I think they would want to try to accomplish something, because they've been in Congress quite some time. They're not passing anything. They're passing resolutions, not passing bills. They're now talking about contempt. They have the opportunity to actually read the Mueller report. The Speaker has not.
Done it.
Chairman Nadler has not. I have. But the interesting part here, when you look at the report, it's in 2 volumes, right?
Right.
Was there collusion? Was there obstruction? 90% of everything in conclusion is made public, not just to Congress, but to everybody. 98% of the collusion portion. The part is exactly what Nadler is looking at. 98% is already there. So why do this?
Well, we'll see what they're going to do. I do want to ask you about some policy issues, though, especially on immigration, because in about 20 minutes, a group of senators, Republican senators, are going to sit down at the White House to talk about immigration. This comes on a day when, I had to clear the sleep from my eyes when I was reading the New York Times editorial today. But basically they said, give Trump his border money. As record numbers of Central American families flee violence and poverty in their homelands, they are overwhelming United States border systems, fueling a humanitarian crisis of overcrowding, disease, and chaos. The Border Patrol is now averaging 1,200 daily arrests, with many migrants arriving exhausted and sick. Something needs to be done soon. Unfortunately, political gamesmanship once again threatens to hold up desperately needed resources. I mean, sir, this could have been written by the Republicans, and this is about emergency money. Do you think that you can get that done soon?
I wish we get it done, because even the New York Times understands the crisis. Everybody in America understands the crisis except the Democrats inside Congress. I was just at the border in the last month. We have never seen these types of numbers of people coming across. And what's really happening is we need to close the loopholes. We need to give the president this money, but they're continuing to withhold it just because it's President Trump requesting it. With any other president, this money would pass, and we'd have a bill signed into law.
We'll see if they change any of their minds. Let me also ask you about drug pricing. Obviously, in every poll for months and months, years, right, the #1 issue, health care, one of the biggest concerns, the cost of prescription drugs. Senator Rick Scott of Florida has put forward a bill in which it's called the Transparency Drug Pricing Act, where he's looking on basically choice and fairness, but it is about importing drugs and also making sure that the prices are the same as people pay overseas. Meg McCarthy wrote in her column today something that I think is, I'm curious how you react to it, that there's a high cost of making drugs more affordable for Americans. If the U.S. enacted European-style price controls on drugs, less of that research would be done. She goes on, but I want to turn it back to you to find out, as the leader of the Republicans, what is your position on this issue? Because President Trump has just thrown his support behind Rick Scott.
Well, I think President Trump is looking at to lower drug pricing, and the actions that this administration has done has been very effective. The Senate is having a hearing today. Even this week, we're passing 2 bipartisan bills that deal with the FDA to have transparency in drug pricing. I'm really concerned when people take a really quick answer to say, import those drugs. Because what happens is you're going to end innovation, but more importantly, it's not going to lower the price in the process. There's a way to deal with rebates, to have transparency in where these pricings are, and I think that's really to the core of what we should be doing, because the pricing of drugs are too high, and we can lower it. This is a place that we should work bipartisan. These are the things we should be working on. But what's the Judiciary Committee going to do this week? They're going to hold the Attorney General in contempt for not breaking the law.
But is there a companion? Do you think that there would be a companion bill for Rick Scott's proposal that the president supports?
You know, I haven't read Rick Scott's bill yet. I've seen 2 bipartisan transparency bills that we passed out of committee, Energy and Commerce, and we're actually bringing it to the floor that will go to the Senate, and I believe will go to the president's desk that he will sign. So we're doing action here, and I hope we can all work together.
And what about the
sure.
FDA? I know that under the Trump administration, they've been trying to figure out a way to speed up the approval process, which would presumably get more drugs on the market, which would then hopefully lower costs for people.
Well, anybody will tell you this new FDA director that came in under President Trump has done a fantastic job. He has sped up in a number of different areas. And as I talk to all elements in there, they like what they have been seeing. We want to be able to continue that as we move forward.
All right. Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, thank you so much. Minority Leader, excuse me. I haven't talked to you in a while, but I know what your title is, and I'm so glad that you were here. Thanks. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.